putting these events and stuff together, and as far as that goes, do you have any advice or any ideas on if other people are wanting to do events, something that I might be able to share with our group about tips or tricks or anything for events? Is there anything that's worked really well for you guys as far as the connecting piece, and as far as, I know I'm putting you on the spot, but I just thought.
For the connecting piece.
Building the relationship. I mean, making that something where they want to come back. I know, you.
Yeah. So with all of our events, we use this process called appreciative inquiry. And it's all about thinking about going from not broken to fixed, but what does excellence looks like? And so all the questions we ask are around that idea that when were we at our best? Okay, now let's pull out what were the qualities of that made it the best. And okay, so now that we know what worked in the past, let's pull that into the future and let's focus on those ideas instead of, a lot of consultants, they focus on what's broken. And so like, that's all you're going to come up with is what's not working. And we want to focus on, okay, what is working and how do we do more of that?
I love that because it gives it that positive aspect spin on it, and it's something you can really kind of get your teeth into. It's like, don't point out all the stuff that's broken. If you're going to point out what's broken, give a solution. I mean, there's at least some way of being able to kind of work through that. So that, I think that's brilliant. Do your people react really well to that? I mean, is that something they can actually implement in their world and take to the next?
Well, and it's all story based too. So it's like, if the topic is parenting, okay, when was a time when you and your partner were the best at parenting? Come up with a specific moment in time, a story, and then, because people love stories, that's how we've connected over millennia, through oral traditions and stories. So you can think of a story, a specific moment in time when you're like, oh man, I crushed parenting in that moment.
I love that.
And then you can share that story, and then you can break down the story like, okay, well, what did you personally bring to that moment? For me, it's often patience. I'm a very impatient person. So it's like, oh, I brought patience to that moment. And then I can start to think of like, who am I? I'm a patient person. So like, then I can start to own that more and bring patience into more moments. And, then I start to identify as that patient person instead of like, the handful of times I wasn't a patient person. Like,
no, right.
It's okay, when were you at your best? And let's bring out more of that of yourself.
I love that. I mean, that is just so powerful. It really is. That is absolutely incredible. Do you personally or whatever, do you have mentors and stuff that you work with? Are there Facebook groups that you belong to that you love that are supporting you as being a coach? Do you have anything like that?
So our good friend, his name is John Berghoff, and he has a program. He just changed the name. It's now called Exchange. It used to be called Leaf. And he is our appreciative inquiry trainer. He worked right under David Cooperrider, who was the inventor of appreciative inquiry. And he's been to like BMW and Facebook and Google and all these huge companies and run these appreciative inquiry summits where he takes people from the entire system and brings them into a room and creates these conversations where now BMW, the engineers and the designers and the, super technical people, they're all working together and they're sharing stories that are, moving the projects forward. Because, the engineer in a typical meeting might not say anything because it's not really their personality to speak up in a big meeting like that. But he creates these intimate little circles where people have this psychological safety to feel comfortable sharing their story. And then, it gets shared on a bigger stage and a bigger stage because other people hear that story and are inspired by it and they want to share it. And so like you don't have to share your own story, but someone else might be affected by what you shared and then share it with the bigger group so that everybody gets to hear it.
Yeah, and that's super, I mean, that was just, like I said, it's super important to do that. I mean, I think that's absolutely critical. And I think it is probably something that the most corporate, in the corporate space miss that. You know what I mean? They miss that opportunity to be able to share those stories. Because I know that I've worked with other companies. I worked with a company that they do the we can attitude. Everything is we can. And it basically started from them being able to do things that were above and beyond what they were called to do. And there was this big printing organization. And they were able to come along and save the day in a lot of different ways for different clients. But that was something that they passed those stories from the head guy that, jumped in a plane and, took printed stuff that had to be at some meeting, that kind of a deal. But that whole legend, there was like this whole, I mean, they had a big O thing on it, showed pictures of him, had caricatures done up of him in the airplane, delivering these specific, I can't remember, some sort of forms that they had to have for the IRS or whatever. They were all going to jail or whatever. And he just actually took it, had it delivered. But it was that kind of, idea that they passed that along, that heritage passed through. Every employee knew that story, of how the company, that backstory. So, it was way before the days of what Tom's shoes and all of that, where everybody has to have the backstory. But that's how that gets passed on. That's how those backstories are built.